Anyway, welcome to Thursday night at LDRS Creative. I'm so excited about today. I'm so bummed that some of you guys don't have your gingerbread houses yet, that doggone USPS. We've got to come up with another option here. Because I know we shipped them right away. We shipped them like the very next morning. They should have been to you. I don't know what's going on. I know some people got them and some people didn't. And that's just all what's going on right now with everything and that's happening in the country, so well, and around the world. Shipping is crazy. But anyway, we are going to be coloring up the gingerbread house. And I don't want to spend too much time chatting right now because we do have a lot of work to do on this. I hope you guys all got my note. If you didn't, if you don't remember me saying it the other night, this is going to be longer than an hour. It's probably going to be closer to 2 hours. I'm hoping to keep it contained to 2 hours. But there is a lot of coloring to do and there's a lot of detail, and I'm really excited to show you guys how I colored this up and just to talk to you about some of the techniques that I use. Please keep in mind throughout this, I'm not an expert at Copics. I mean, what I'm showing you is really just the way that I do it. So you may watch other people color, you may learn from somebody else, and they may do it differently than I do. So just bear in mind that this is my way of doing it. Some of the techniques I learned from other people, some of the techniques I just started doing on my own because I liked how it looked. But we're going to take you through it. We're going to walk you through and we're going to see how we do. So I'm going to switch the camera and we're going to get rolling. If I can figure out how to do it again. There we go. All righty. This is what we're going to be coloring up tonight. Excuse me. Throat's a little bit dry, so periodically I am going to have to get a little drink of water tonight, just because this is going to be going on over an hour. So this is what we're coloring up, the gingerbread house, and this is, I mean, this stamp set is 4x6. The gingerbread house is very, very close to A2 size, so it's probably, I think it's about 4 inches in height and almost 5.5 inches wide. So there's a lot to this and there's a lot of detail and it is just gorgeous. So we're going to get to it. Hopefully you guys have already got your image stamped. Oops, dropping things already. I'm going to go through the Copics. I gave the list already. So let me show you what I've got here. You should have your colorless blender. That's just a standard whenever you're going to be coloring with Copics, and keep in mind, you don't have to be using Copics. I want to say this again. I want to make sure everybody knows you don't have to color with Copics. This is what I'm coloring with. If you have Spectrum Noir or any other kind of a marker, you just want to have similar colors that I'm using here. If you're going to be watercoloring or working with pencils, again, similar colors. Just note that what I'm showing you is what I'm using. So colorless blender, always have that on hand. I'm going to take you through my colors really quickly. And let's see. I'm going to angle these so that the camera catches them nicely. For for your blues, I've got B01, 02, and 04. For my red, I've got R20, 22, 24, and I couldn't remember if I listed this or not. I don't even remember if I used it or if I'm going to use it, but I've got R27 out here as well. I can't remember if that was an extra or not. So if you don't have it, don't worry about it. Let's see, for my greens, I've got, it's actually a yellow green I went with for green. Whoa, I gotta turn off my green screen. Notice you can't see the green caps. There we go. That's always so weird. Okay, so here we go. For greens, I've got, this is actually a YG, which is a yellow green. So I have YG 06, 07, 09. For my yellows, oh, I forgot one of my reds. I also had R11. Forgot that one. For my yellows, I've got Y02, Y15, and Y17. Let's see, I've got a series of grays here. So, and they're for different purposes. And if you don't have all of these grays, don't worry about it. Just make do with what you have. But I have warm grays ranging from W00, 1, 3, and 5. Okay, a warm gray has a brown undertone. I've also got a couple of cool grays, C1 and C3. And then I have a neutral, which is N3. And then the last grouping that I have are my E's. Now, let me see, let me pull these out. I have an E11, E50, which is a beautiful creamy color, and then E40, which is kind of it's a grayish beigey color. It's really pretty. I love using that with my grays sometimes. So, and then the last set of E's that I have are E33 or 33, 35, 37, and then 53. Okay, so these are all the colors that I've got pulled, and we're going to get started. I'm going to start on this where I started my coloring when I did this. I don't normally do this. I don't normally start with red, but for some reason I wanted to frame out it. It kind of helped me, you know, when you have an image. Ugh, let me get all this stuff in here. Sorry, I got to put all these away. When you have an image that has this amount of detail, you almost need to have some sort of a starting point. You have to kind of come up with where your starting point is going to be. And sometimes it's really hard to see what some of the detail is. And I tell you, I almost never start with red because I don't want my reds to kind of bleed into other colors and stuff, but I didn't worry about it on this one. So I did actually start with red on this. And the reds that I'm starting with, let's see, I wanted to just kind of map it out. And so I pulled my 20s, my R20s. So I have R20, R22, R24, and R27. So these are the 4 that I'm starting with. All right. I color light to dark. And I decided that, you know, and you can color these things however you want. Keep in mind, that's the beautiful thing. But I really wanted to trim out my house in red. And so the first part that I'm going to do is going to be all of the red that's going up around the trim of this house and around the trim of the peaks of the house, and then the trim on the windows. I'm going to move into some of the outlying red as well, like on the pieces of candy. But I'm not going to do all the red around the candy on the inside. I'm only going to do kind of the ones that are on the outside because I don't want to get too close to some of that brown in some of those spaces. So I've got my R20. I'm going to try and do this so that I don't make the screen blurry. And I literally am just coming in here with a little bit of color, laying down my lightest color. Hopefully that's not getting blurry. What's going on, Alan? Okay. So I'm laying down just a tiny, tiny little bit of color. Whenever I'm coloring with, well, really with anything, I move my image around a lot. So I'm just going to lay this base color down just with the tip of my brush. It doesn't have to be perfect. Because you got to keep in mind, this one thing I always keep in mind is that I'm always going to be adding shadows and stuff. I can cover up just about any mistake that I make. Just about. So I'm laying just a little bit of that red down. So I'm going to take care of this area first. So that was my R20. Now I'm going to move on to 22. And I'm going to bring this in and I'm going to go over most of it, but not all of it. I'm going to leave a little bit in that center area there that I kind of want to have a little bit of a highlight going on. It gives me an option for a highlight if I don't lay down too much color at one time. All right, I'm going to do the same thing in all these areas, just bring in a little bit of color up toward the center, but not all the way. Just kind of flick that color in there, and again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Leaving just little areas kind of in there that might have a little bit of highlight. Now on to my R24. And I'm going to do the same kind of thing, but a little bit less. Literally putting my brush down and just flicking a tiny little bit in those areas. I'm not going to come back with this darker color. I'm only going to brush away from me because that's where I'm more comfortable. So I tie my image even more so that I can flick the color away from me. And you can see I went out of the line there a little bit, but it's not going to matter. Now, my darkest color is my R27, and I'm going to leave that one for now. I'm not going to move to that one. I'm going to come back with my R20, and I'm going to go all the way across again. Don't worry about the fact that you go out of the line just a little bit there, because we're going to be pulling other color in. And keeping in mind, I have my colorless blender too. So with this lighter color, by the way, I don't mind flicking in toward me because the color is so light. So if I do go out of the line, it's not going to be catastrophic because the color is so light. But now I'm coming right into the center just to kind of richen up where that little highlight is again. Now this is where your colorless blender comes in. I went out of my line, out of the line a little bit there, so I'm just going to do a little bit of cleanup, tiny little bit of cleanup, and it's going to push it right back up. Okay? So I'm going to move up now in color, back up to my R20. It can take a lot of layers to get the right shade of the red that I want. But I still want to maintain that highlight in the center. But I'm going to tighten up that highlight just a little bit because I think it looks a bit elongated. I'm just flicking a little bit more of this in just to balance it out and strengthen that highlight a little bit. Come right down over it. And then I'm going up to my 24 again. So I'm going to get all of these areas that are supposed to be dark. I'm going to go over them one more time because I really want to richen up that red. There we go. And now here's where I'm going to pull in my 27. I'm happy with the red that I have now. Terry's saying, do you always start with your lightest color? I do, but that isn't necessarily the right way to do it. It's not the wrong way to do it, but it's just the way that I do it. It's the way that I was trained. I'm more comfortable with it because for me, it offers me a little more control of my color. I know a lot of colorists like to start with their darkest color to figure out like where their shadows and stuff are going to be. But I like to lay out my color with my lightest first and then come in with the dark colors. It's just my preference. It's the way that I've always done it, and it's the way that I was trained when I first started learning how to color with Copics. Okay, so now we have a beautiful, beautiful red. We could have some gorgeous highlights in there, and I think it looks really, really pretty. I am going to take my R20, and right where my darkest color ends, I'm going to pull into the lightest, that highlight. It's just going to soften that transition a little bit. Okay, so you can see there's a stronger transition of color here. I don't want to come in too far to the dark color because I don't want to pull that dark color out. Okay, I have an area here where I got a little bit of red out. I'm going to push it up and in with my colorless blender. I'm not concerned with whether or not I get all the color out of there. I just want to just minimize it a bit. So we've got a good start with that red. I think it's really pretty. So now I'm going to move over to, with my R20, same colors again, and I'm going to move over to my little candies here. And I'm going to leave a little bit of white. I'm just going to go every other stripe. And you can see I left a tiny, tiny little bit of white out on the outer edge of it, on the outer edge of each of those. You know what, I think I am going to go ahead with these guys here. I wasn't going to, but I think I will. Let's get all my red out of the way. Oops, I got two in a row there, so I'll fix that in just a moment. I can hit that with my colorless blender, blend some of that out. Oops, I'm blending the wrong one. This is what happens when I'm on camera. I can hit that with gray afterwards. Let that dry a little bit before I fix. Are you laughing at me, Alan?
I am.
Why? Because I hit the wrong one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what happens sometimes. But it's not that big of a deal because even though I want it to be white, I'm going to go over it with gray anyway. So even though I have a little bit of pink in here, I'm going to be hitting that with gray. So it's not going to be that big of a deal. So I'm going to go up to all these little candies and just every other one, I'm going to add, every other little stripe, I'm going to add some red. And, you know, I think actually that kind of demonstrates another, you know, why I like to map out with my lighter colors. That's a perfect example of why. Because if I mapped that out with my really dark red, it wouldn't clean up as well. I wouldn't be able to fix it as well. Does that make sense? I hope. If anybody has any questions about anything, please put those out there. Alan is standing by to put questions up on the screen for me. Let me see. I'm also going to get all of these little frames around the windows. Go around the shutters, just very, very gently. Again, I don't really care if I go in or if I go outside of the line because I'm going to be doing a lot of shadowing with these. Let me see if there's any more that I need to get. I think that's it.
Upper frame
Ah, the upper one, you're right, thank you. There's a lot of detail on these. Let me fix this. There we go. That was my little blender. So this is my R20 again. Let's get a little bit on, because this is like a little, looks like a lifesaver. Really cute. Okay, I'm not going to do the other little candies yet. We'll get to those later. I'm going to push some of this color. This is my blender, my colorless blender. I'm just pushing that out to get some of that out of there. And so now I'm going to move to my R22. And I'm going to dot in a tiny little bit of color onto each of those where I've mapped it out. Now when it comes to these little frames, oh, that's getting blurry. It's not staying. This autofocus is a problem. Is it because we have words on here that it's a problem?
Yeah. Because of where it's sensing.
Maybe if I move it over here, it'll be better.
Stop this thing from bouncing.
Okay, so where it comes to these little frames, I'm going to push color up and in from each of these corners. And so I left kind of the center of each of those lighter. I'm going to do the same thing here. Again, it's kind of creating like a highlight. So I'm coming around the corner. Come around this edge here. And then do the same thing in each of these corners. Do I have to move over here, Alan? I'm struggling with this autofocus. Just kind of flick some of that color in there to get those, like where you, mapping out where those little shadows are going to be. Okay? I'm going to come in here where each of these little candies are and add a little bit to the red. Literally just tapping a little bit of color in there. All right. And then we have these little candy canes where I'm going to dot a little bit in here as well. Okay. Did you have a question that you were putting up there, Alan?
Yeah.
This is my blender. I'm just fixing, putting a little bit of color back in there. You can see I've got that red coming out there. What happened to the question?
We got another one.
Okay. Oh, I missed one. I missed this over here. There we go. Now the next color, okay, so Kathy is saying, do you know when you'll be on HSN? That won't be until March. Our next shows are March again. Karen is saying, what kind of paper am I using? This is Nina Classic Crest Solar White, 110 pound, Nina Classic Crest Solar White, 110 pound cardstock. We do have it in the store, LDRS.com. If you go under the papers tab, you will find it. LDRScreative.com. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm a little focused on something else at the moment. Okay, so now I have R24, and I'm just going over those same areas a little bit. Those corners where I added some of that color just to richen, and I'm going one shade deeper. There we go. And with every layer, you can really see how it starts to come together. Okay. And again, I'm not really caring too much about staying in the lines because I'm going to be adding a lot of shadowing, and there's a lot of detail in these. And I can cover up any error with shading. It's one of my favorite things. Okay, so now we have that in there, and I'm going to come in now. I'm going to drop one color down to R22. Okay, so that was my R24. I'm going to come down to R22, and I'm going to blend this color in to these areas where my highlights are. But I'm not going all the way into the darkest color because I don't want to pull that color out. Okay, so like right here, you can see where the darker color stops and meets the lighter one. I'm just pulling those together, just in that area. And that's what allows it to still have that little bit of highlight in there. And it's not going to soften my darkest red because I'm not pulling the color out of it. It's one thing about the alcohol markers. They will pull the color from each other, which is really great. You just need to know, you just need to have an understanding of when to do that and when, you know, when not to, so you can control what you're doing with it. Okay? So there is my red. I'm going to leave that for right now, and we're going to move on to a different color. So I want to get all my base colors down before I start adding all that age in that I talked to you about. So the next one I'm going to do, believe it or not, I'm going to grab my E's. All right. So grab all of your E's. And this part is going to take, well, this part's probably going to take the most amount of time. I'm going to start with E50. It's a really creamy color. Alan, can you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Can you get me another piece of this? Because I want to,
Is that this?
no, over there, there's 3. Alan, pay attention where I'm pointing.
Here?
No, up above where I'm, right, look at me. See, right over there. Yep, right there. The one in the middle is this. There's three stacks there. Thank you. Yep, this is it. Just give me this piece is good. Okay, thank you. Whew. That shouldn't have been that difficult.
No.
I'm like, Alan, watch where I'm pointing. You're looking in an entirely different direction, just grabbing things, and I'm like, no, pay attention. Okay, the reason I wanted to have another piece here is just to kind of show you what this color looks like, because it's really pretty. This is an E50. It's really creamy, but it still has kind of a beige quality to it. Now, I'm going to use this sparingly. I'm not going to go up against that red, but I want to get this in all of the areas where I've got cookie. Okay, so you're thinking about your little gingerbread here, and if you want, you know, it's good to have this thing on hand too. You could take a look at this and see where all your color is going to go, where everything is going to start and stop. Okay, so I'm just going to very quickly kind of dab in this color. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't even have to go all the way up to the lines. I just want to get a base in, and be careful you don't pull that red. That red is a little scary, so I'm not going to go right up to the red. I'm just going to kind of stay around it. These little things are candy, so I'm not going to color those in, those little swirly things. I am going to get on, no, I'm not going to get the inside of that. I was going to get the inside of the window, but I'm not. So I'm just going to get some of this color in here. These are little leaves, so I'm not going to color those on the inside. Careful with my red. This is literally just kind of laying a foundation. Go around those little candies. And I know this part isn't exciting, but it's necessary. Gives you a really good base and something to blend into. This is going to end up being my lightest color in the center of all this color on the cookie areas. Okay, just dab some of this in where it's going to be. I'm going to go around this little candy. I'm going to dot in when I'm next to the red, because if I go like this and actually brush across that red, it's gonna push that, it's gonna pull that red. So I'm gonna just dot my marker down when I'm next to that red, so that I'm really careful. Dotting in here, dotting around. And I could have done this first, but I really wanted to map out where my red was. That's how I did it the first time. And so I'm kind of showing you how I did it when I did it the first time. So I'm going to put some color down in the center of each of these little areas. Doesn't have to go all the way up Oops, that didn't have to be in the middle there. I'm going to actually color that with a little bit of gray. So I put color in the wrong place again, but I can move it out with my blender. Just get all these, a little bit of color in the center. This again it's a mapping of where all the color is going to go. All right, and so before I forget, I put a little bit of beige in here, and I don't want it in there, so I'm going to get that out of there. I made a little bit of a mess. All right, but I can fix that with gray. Let's see. My next color, isn't that pretty? That's my E40. It's one of my favorite colors. So my next color is actually, I'm going to use my E35. And this is where I'm going to start adding in some of the kind of caramel areas. I'm just touching down a tiny, tiny little bit with the tip of my brush on the outside. Now, this is where the roof is here. I want my darker areas to be on the inside edges. So with my E35, I'm just going to add a tiny, tiny little bit of that in here. And you're going to see that I'm going to work in small areas here. So that's my E35. E33, I'm going to pull that out a tiny, tiny little bit. So yeah, I did go up to a darker color and now to a lighter color. And then I'm going to go back to my E50. And I'm going to kind of blend that out a bit. Just kind of blend over that edge to kind of smooth it out where those colors come together. And then I've got E37, and I'm literally going to dot this around just like so in little dots. Oops, you can't see it because it's driving me nuts with that.
Oh,
See how,
those little dots.
yeah, the little dots give it that cookie look. It looks like little cookie crumbs. Isn't that cute? Like little cookie crumbs. That's what I think is so pretty about it. I just love that. So we're going to do that in all of these areas. Where'd my colors go? So my 35, let me get these others out of the way. So I've got my E35. I'm going to just kind of bring some of that color in here around these edges. This is the darker color. I like to do it unevenly, unevenly, because I'm literally just squiggling some of it around in here because I don't want a lot of it. And I like to do it in an uneven manner because I think it's easier to blend your edges when they're uneven. So next up is E33. Now 33, I'm going to start pulling that color out just a little bit in here. Flicking it just a little bit to smooth that edge. So that gives me a nice transition between the 35 and the 33. And then when I come back to my 53, and this is going to take a little bit of work, okay? When I come back to my 53, I'm going to start blending those out a bit, pulling that color from the dark into the light. If it's not moving like you want it, then make some little circles around, and that's going to blend it for you. And this is going to take a few applications because we're going to be going from a much darker color into a lighter color. So you have to have patience. This is why it can take longer to do. Now I have an E53 here as well. I'm going to start pulling some of that and give kind of a transition, a little bit gentler transition between the two, because I have a bigger area. That was my, what was that, 53? This is 33. We'll pull some of that out again. Now I'm going to add a little bit in here as well, because we have other areas we have to contend with, right? Go around the little gum pieces. Go around that little snow. And I'm just kind of going back and forth between my colors. So this is a 53 again. A little bit of a transition. Rub those out, kind of blend those out a bit. You just kind of go back and forth between your colors. I do need to add a little bit of a darker color right in here at the edge of the wall. This is my 53. A little bit of detail here. And I want to have a little bit of dark underneath that part of the house there too. And now I'm going to go back to 33. I'm literally just bouncing around my colors to see where I need more color. So I'm going a little bit darker down here. This is my 33. Add some of the darker color back in here because I blended it out a bit. And then 53. Because I'm going to warm it and make it a little more caramel right in there. And then next, I'm going to come in with my E50 and push this color around. Make it a little bit creamier in the centers, of these spaces. Blend those edges a bit. And then there's one area here that I want to get some dark color in. I keep forgetting to set this down, I'm sorry. This is an E35. And I want to have a little bit of color underneath the that little flower box. This is an E30. There we go. And then 53, just to blend out that edge and soften it a bit. And now we're going to give that cookie kind of a look with E37. And I'm going to dot, ooh, the screen is driving me nuts. I would normally be dotting straight like this, but it wants to, I wonder if I go like that. Maybe that'll be better if it doesn't try and catch the the numbers on the end of the cap. Is that a little better, Alan?
Maybe.
So I'm adding those little cookie crumbs in there. Any questions from anybody?
Not at the moment.
Everybody's so quiet. A little bit of dark under there just to really strengthen that shadow underneath. Same up under here. Little cookie crumbs. So cute. I think it's coming together. I do.
Where'd the English accent come from?
Sorry, this is my E50. I was channeling Nikki.
Oh.
Okay, so there we have that so far. It's coming together. I'm going to go back into this area now with my E35. And let me get this other side of the cap off. See if maybe that'll make it so that it doesn't, I'm just going to get some of the, just get a little bit of this color down. I literally just kind of squiggle some of it in here because I want it to be uneven. This little door area is in front of the rest of the house. So that's why I put that line in there. I come in here to each of these little areas. In between all these little gumdrops. Just with a little bit of color. And you should know, by the way, I'm actually coloring this probably, a little bit different than I colored it the first time. And it can be different every single time. So now we have E33. And I'm just going to come in and kind of flick just gently over that edge to blend that color up a bit. Not up, but blend it out, I guess. And it'll combine those two colors very nicely. There we go. And then E53 is a little more caramel-like. And it's going to soften that transition between those two. But I still want to leave some of that 50, that E50, because that's my highlight. Kathy says, does this set have a die cut set to go with it? It absolutely does. This is the set, Gingerbread House. It is a 3-die set, so it cuts out the entire house. And then it has a separate die in it to cut all of these. See how this house is cut out? It cuts out that frame, and then there's a separate die that will cut out the little windows and doors so that they open and close. And then it also has a separate die in here for another little window basket. So now I'm going to go to E50 and just kind of smooth this out a tiny little bit between these colors, keeping that creamy E50 as my highlight. All right, and then the next thing, oops, I think I missed a little spot in here maybe. I didn't get those. There we go. And then the next thing is to do E37 where I have my little cookies, little cookie crumbs. Oops, let me get rid of that. So it looks like, what?
It is helping a lot with the autofocus.
Good.
You flip the marker around that way.
Yeah. So there's no words to focus on?
Yeah, that helps too.
So get all these little cookie crumbs in here. Now the cookie crumbs serve not only as you know, as the texture for the cookie, but I'm also using them to strengthen the like some of the deeper areas, like the shadowed areas. And I think it gives a nice transition between the colors as well. See how cute? I like the cookie crumbs. What do you think so far?
I think it's great.
I think it looks really cute. Okay, so now we're going to do the rest of the brown. So we're going to continue doing this, and I'm going to work on this area down here, and then we're going to go to that cross hatch up there. So starting to really regret having my name on the markers because I think it's focusing on that too. So I'm going to come in underneath. This is my E35. Again, keeping this uneven so the lines are not real solid and straight. Bring a little bit of color down the side here into these little areas underneath. I tend to work a lot in squiggles when I'm laying down where I want my shadowed areas to be. And that has everything to do with the fact that I want to make it easier to blend. Okay, so that is E35. E33. I'm going to kind of flick that color a little bit with my E33. Turning my image where I need, but do not cover up all of that lightest E50. Use this very minimally. I'm not even going to put it at the bottom there because it's not necessary. I don't have a whole lot of space there. Okay. And then I come in with E53 again. It's going to make that a little more caramel-like. Go over some of these areas where my little squiggles are just to smooth them a bit. All right. And then next is going to be E50 to finish that off. Blend that in. Okay. Then we do our little cookie crumbs. I'm going to strengthen, this is my E37. I'm going to strengthen this, a little bit of a shadow underneath each of those the little window come in here. I'm actually going to just color this right up in here dark because I want to strengthen that shadow, because it shows that the awning, or that comes out over the rest of the house. And then my little cookie Crumbs.
Are there structural issues with that house?
Structural?
Is that why you're getting the crumbs?
Did somebody ask that?
No, I am.
Alan is asking if we're getting crumbs because there are structural issues with the house. Well, you have to remember, it was made by gingerbread men, so I'm not sure. Men, yes,
Okay.
of course, men, gingerbread men. If it were gingerbread women, we probably wouldn't have this issue. They would have taken much better care and planning. Do the doors and windows open? Somebody is asking. They will if you cut with the die. Look how cute. All right. So I know this is a lot of brown to contend with, but think of it this way. It gives you a lot of practice with the brown. All right, so now we're going to come up into this area up in here where we kind of have that crosshatch. And we got to use this very sparingly. So I'm literally going to be working in dots in this area. So this is E35. What? Oh, was it all blurred? Sorry. Well, you got to tell me what oh yep means. Okay, so he says, yep. And I'm supposed to know what that is. Okay, so I'm working in little dots because I don't want a lot of color in here. This is a smaller area. And I want to make sure that I keep some of that lighter area in each of these. Now, out on the side here, I'm only going to be dotting toward the inside, letting the light kind of hit on the outside. I'm dabbing very, very lightly, by the way. Oh, I see where I missed something. E50, gotta get that right in there. Okay. So that was 35, E35. Now I've got E33. Get a little bit of this in just so I have a variation of color. And I know it probably doesn't look like a variation of color to you, but it is. Okay. Now I'm going to take some of that E53. Okay, that's my color that's a little more caramel. And I'm actually going to very, very lightly do some light brush strokes, just a little bit, not enough that I blend in all of those little dots and circles, little things that I put in there. But I do want to smush the color around just a little bit, and I'm going from the outside in on all of these. And then I will correct afterwards where I want to add some more effect with the dots and the darker kind of shadows. And again, I'm not an expert here. This is just the way that I do it. This is the way that I did it anyway. Okay, so we have a good start there. I do want to grab my E50. I'm actually going to come back in here with this one. This is my blender because I think I got a little too much in the center there. I don't like it. So push some of that color out with my blender and let that dry. And then I'm got my E37, and this is where I'm going to start darkening up some of those areas on the insides and do some of the darker little cookie marks. Oops, it's all blurry. Sorry, let me get that off of there. So in here, and real tight up into the inside there, and get some little cookies, cookie crumbs. Darken that on the inside here. So I think the darker areas, like where you put those little cookie crumbs, I think that's what really gives it the depth with this E37. Okay, I'm going to come in dark underneath this window just to really ground that. You have questions for me or anything, Ellen?
I just answered a question. I'm not sure I answered it right. Do we have wish list? I think you do.
Yes,
right?
we do.
Okay.
We do have a wish list. If you could speak up a little more. I noticed, Alan, when I do the playback, I don't hear you very well on the playback.
That's intentional.
No, but sometimes when I just answer your question, people don't know what the question was, and I forget to say the question again sometimes. Okay. Cookie crumbs in here. There we go. And if some areas look a little plain, like they need something, then just add some cookie crumbs. Okay. I think that's good with the cookie crumbs. Let me get over here. Okay, so I think we've got all the brown done for now. Oh, I do see an area that I wanted to get a couple of little cookie crumbs up in here. I like that little bit of texture. There we go. I think that makes all the difference. Okay, so I'm going to put my E's away. I'm going to get a quick drink of water. And now I'm going to get my green out. So the greens that I've got out are YG060709. Okay. And for me, the green areas are the trees. I decided to do the door in green. I thought that would be really pretty. And then these little leaves over here. And when I go back to do some of the candy, some of that's going to be green as well. So YG06, that's your YG06. It's really bright, really pretty. So I'm just going to uncap both sides. Get some green on these little leaves here. Literally just a little flick of the green. I leave a little bit of white at the end just because I think it's pretty. I'm going to do some green in this cross hatching here. Again, I like to leave a little bit of white, just like a little highlight. So that's why you see some of that white in there. And then from the side here, I just kind of flick in a little bit of that light green and I left some of the white in the center because I think it's pretty. Gives it kind of a frosty, icy kind of a look. So then again, I did kind of a crosshatch here and then came back down over it like that. Put a little bit of green at the base there. And then flick in a tiny bit, but not all the way across. Now, I'm going to leave the door for last because that one was really fun to do, and I want to kind of talk through that a little bit as I do it. So now I'm going to go up to YG06 and again start at the base where you want the darkest color. Flick up. All right, it's going to brighten that. I'm going to come in and go over some of those areas again where I have some of that, but I don't want to cover up that light green altogether. Okay, so I leave some of that in there. This kind of gives a little bit of a texture. That's kind of fun. I think it's fun to kind of go for kind of a cartoony kind of a look. So when I do stuff like this, I actually think about like Dr. Seuss and how some of that might look. It's really playful. So this one is YG09, and I'm going to flick up, and I'm only going to keep that at the very end. I'm not going to go all the way over the rest of the green. I'm going to do a little bit of dabbing in of this darker color in here, or this darker green, just to give depth of color in some of the areas. So up here at the top and maybe down in some of the lower portion of these little diamond shaped areas. Give it a little more color down in here, you know, where you might have a little shadow. And then just kind of dab it in a little bit, squiggle it around a little bit on the end. And it just creates a little depth of color, which is nice. Okay. So next, I'm going to use these same colors for the door. And I think this is really fun. So for the door, actually I wanted to do the door frame in red, but I'm going to do that afterwards, after I do this. So I'm going to take YG06 and I'm going to flick this upwards. And then down. Leave kind of that center light a little bit, like so. And we're going to come back over it. So that was my lightest color. So here's my YG07. I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm not going to go in as far. I like the little bit of texture that you get when you do this kind of. Keep some of them shorter, some of them a little bit longer. And then YG09. Again, some are short, some are long. Oops, sometimes you just knock over the caps. Okay. And then I'm going to take my 06 again, right over the center. I'm not pulling all the way in from the edge. And then that's going to give that kind of like a nice little highlight and some texture. And I just think it looks really pretty. That's all there is with those greens. I'm going to go back to my red, and I'm going to do that little bit of trim around the door. So I have my R22. Sometimes we forget things, and I think I forgot this area. So we'll just get this really quick. Leave some of that a little bit lighter. So that's R22, R24. Oops. And again, from the bottom up, because that's where my darker area is going to be. And then I'm going to go from the point towards the center. And then my darkest is my 27. Get that right up at the top there. From the bottom, get those deep dark areas. And then I'm going to take my 20 and I'm going to close up that gap. All right, so now I have that little bit of highlight on that door frame. Okay. All righty, what do we have next? What do we have left? Let's tackle some. I'm going to get all these little candy colors and all around the door. So now we're going to play with a variation of color. So I'm going to follow, because it took me a little bit longer. I have mine over here that I worked on. And it took me a little bit longer to kind of map out where I wanted things. So I'm going to go according to that and map those out exactly as I did it on there. Now this is where that lightest, what, Alan?
Little spot right there.
What?
There that needs brown.
What?
Yeah, a little spot right there that needs brown. Right
Oh, okay.
there.
Okay. Alan is seeing a little spot that needs brown. One little area right in here. I'll just do a tiny little bit of brown there. And any brown will do. Doesn't matter which brown. I'm going to go ahead and start getting these little candies in here. Now this is where I'm going to do, I've got my little R11 here. And so I'm going to do some of my lightest R11 in here and map out where my red is going to go. And the idea with this was that I just didn't want colors to be so close together. So I've got the one candy here. This is the, which candy is this? This is the second one up from the bottom. And then I've got this one over here. And then I've got my little gingerbread men covering the rest. But I've got a red over here. And I think that is it for the red, but I'm going to put one down here because it looks like it's going to be about there. Okay, so I've mapped out those reds. So I'm going to go up to my R20 now, and I'm literally going to dot this around and just kind of squiggle and leave a little bit of like one side really, really light. And that's going to kind of give it a bright point. And it's going to, it gives it like, it saves a little highlight. And it almost makes it look a little frosted by leaving the edges like that, like the tops somewhere. So that's R20. I'm going to go up to 22. And this is going to be a little bit less, just around the edge at the bottom, at like kind of like the base. But again, I'm squiggling this in because I don't want it full color. I work a lot with squiggles when I'm coloring stuff. It's kind of strange, but almost like your hand is shaky. That's kind of what I'm doing with it. And then I'm going to go up to R24. And now I'm literally going to focus on the outermost edge in here, where I've made it dark. And here's like the base of these little gumdrops. And then I'm going to come in with 27 and really strengthen that edge there. Make that really good and dark. Then I'm going to work my way back down in my color, so I have my R20. And I'm going to start filling in just a tiny bit, still leaving a little bit. That one doesn't need any. Those don't need any. This one maybe a little bit. So like where I don't see much pink anymore, that's where I'm adding in a little color. And then I'm going to finish with my R11. Just a tiny little bit, but leave some of that white because you want that bright spot. Okay, so that's those little red balls. Let me see if there's any other red that I may have missed. I don't see any. I'm going to move to blue. We haven't done anything with blue yet. So my blue colors are B01, B02, and B04. All right. And a couple of things that I wanted to do with blue, and I am going to get back to that candy, but I wanted to get the top of this window here and this this little flower box. So I'm going to pull the color in from each side there. I'm going to pull down on this little awning in toward the center. And then I'm also going to kind of flick up. And I like leaving a white area in there in some spots because that's going to give me a highlight by the time I'm done. So that's those. I've also got this little candy swirl. I'm going to do this little candy swirl too. Get that. Let's see, do I have any other candy swirls? I think that's it for now. If I see another one, we'll get it. So then here's B02. I come back up here and just pull that color in from the side and just flick it unevenly and leave a little bit of white in that center. And then again, I'm going to come down, flicking toward the center again. And then I'm also going to go up from the base, or from the bottom line there.
A lot of people are asking that.
Asking what?
Why you're taking both ends off the marker, equalize it into defeat the autofocus.
Yeah, I'm taking both ends off the marker simply because when I go like this and then I'm coloring, I think the autofocus is focusing up here. And I don't want that because see how blurry it's getting here? So I'm taking that off and turning this around with the hopes that when I color, the focus stays on the picture. I don't normally take the second end off of the marker when I'm coloring. That it's not necessarily. You don't have to equalize anything. You don't have to do anything like that. I'm only doing it because my autofocus is a real pain in the butt.
I promise to make it better before the next one.
Yes. So yeah, so the second one is coming off only to make it a little bit easier for you guys to see stuff with the focus. So now I have my darkest color, which is the B04. I'm not sure it's helping all that much, to be honest with you.
It's positional, so it depends on where you put the paper.
Oh, so if I put it over here, is it better?
No, try it. Yes.
It's better over here?
Yes, so it's focusing somewhere in the middle of the screen.
Okay, so I have to pay attention to where the paper is too.
Yeah.
Husband's got to fix that. So this is B04. I'm just adding tiny little bit. I'm not going to pull this color down through there because I want this to be my darkest color. There we go. That gives it kind of a snowy, icy look. I think it's pretty. Little highlights. Little bit goes a long way. Okay. So now let's take these same colors, B01, and I'm going to go to my little candies over here. And I'm just going to kind of map out where I want my little candy, my blue candies to be. Leaving some white areas for little highlights. Is there anywhere else? Oh, I wanted to get some up in here too. That's another little squiggly thing that I missed. There we go. Candies down here, little gumdrops. There's one. And let's see. Let's put one over here. And I'll do one here. All right. So I'm going to try and have at least 3 of each colored candy. So that was my B01. So here's B02. And so it gets darker. So I'm going to stay around the darker area, kind of mapping out this, going along the same path that I did with the B01, but I'm not covering it up completely. Same thing here with my little gumdrops. And then I'm going to just do a couple of little lines in here with these little squigglies just to make those stand out a little bit more. Is there something you want to say, Alan?
No.
Okay. And so now we have B04. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to stay even more shallow with this one, just to really deepen and strengthen the darker area. Right on the inside edge there. All right. And now I'm going to go back to my lightest color. Doesn't that blue brighten up the whole picture? I just love it. And in some of these areas where maybe I lost some of the lighter blue, I'm going to add a tiny bit, but not much. I don't want to cover up that white. There we go. And I think that's all there is to those little candies there. So that is the blue. Next, I'm going to go back to green for the little candies. So my Y06, I've got a little candy, little green one over here. Leave that tiny bit of white. Here's one. And you know, you don't have to put your colors in the same places as mine, by the way. You can have your candy colors in different places. Let me grab another one over here. Then let's put this one down here. There we go. Oh, we got to get these little leaves down here. Start seeing things as you start looking around, and as other things start to fill in, you start realizing that other things start standing out. So we had the leaves down here on these flowers, candy flowers. Okay. And then now I'm going to go to YG07 and fill in just in the darkest area of these little green candies again. I'm not covering up the lighter green completely, just going over a little bit, maybe about 2/3. I'm going to flick up on these little leaves. There we go. And then my last green is YG09. So hopefully you're starting to see why I was able to get lost in this for a couple of hours. It's very relaxing. There's a lot of detail, but it's incredibly relaxing to do. As long as you don't take it too seriously and don't worry too much about staying in the lines and all that stuff, because, well, you'll see once we get all this color down and we start going in, once I start showing you how I add the other like the shadows to it that we're going to be doing, I think you'll understand. So this is the lighter green. I'm just kind of going in and adding that where I need it. And now next up, we're going to go to yellow. Okay, so the yellows are going to be Y02, Y15, and Y17. Okay, we're going to start with Y02. This is going to be like my brightest. And I'm going to lay this down kind of in the center of all these little panes of glass, because those are my little bright spots. Don't worry about the ones on the outer edge because we're going to hit those with kind of that golden color. So I'm just going to dab this in to each of these little window panes because that's my brightest. I'm going to hit this one up here too. Don't forget that little window up there. All right. I'm also going to do the rest of my little candies. Careful of that red. You don't want to pull other colors in there, okay? So get those candies over there. Is there anybody else I missed? I don't think so. I do see something I missed, but not with yellow. I'm going to grab my this lightest green again. I have like a little area here that's supposed to be a little bit more green. And these little leaves on those, so I want to hit those. Okay. So my next yellow is going to be Y15. Now this is where I'm going to add a little bit in like the corners of each of the panes and on the outer end, and I'm literally dotting it in because I don't want to color over all that other yellow, and I don't want to be rubbing this around because I have other colors. I have brown and I have red in there. And so I'm going to dot this in because I don't want to pull that red in. So be careful with this. I'm dotting it into the centers there too, like into each of those little panes in like those little corners, because I think it really adds like a depth of the color. But be really careful with that red. Just dotting. If you're not sure if you got red on your on your brush, then check it, because you don't want to get that in there. All right, up in here. So I'm just kind of going in some of those corners of each of those little window panes. I think it creates a depth of the light that I like a lot. And now Y17. Let's check out this color. See how it's kind of like golden? Oh, I almost forgot. Sorry. Y15, we need to get the bottom of these little gumdrops. Almost forgot those. And then this one too. Just don't be rubbing those. Okay. So now this is Y17. And now I'm going to very carefully just get in some of these areas that very, very sparingly dot a little bit of this around some of the edges. Just to give it another layer of depth. But again, use this very, very sparingly because this color is, it's a significant color. We don't want everything to be really dark like it. I'm going to come up around these corners maybe a little bit. And a couple of those little panes of glass, the very, very bottom of each of the gumdrops. There we go. And then I'm going to blend it together in the center with my Y02. But I'm not going out to that edge. I don't want to get that red. I just want to blend those edges. So I'm making some little circles just to kind of blend those colors, those little edges of the colors where the colors meet, just to bring those together with the very tip of my brush. And it's okay to leave some little white areas in there because it gives you those little highlights. Like these smaller panes, I'm not even going to touch those because I love having that white in there. I think it looks really pretty. Just hit that with the very, very tip. Okay? So that's all there is to those for now. Next up, we're going to move to the chimney. So let me see if I can grab my colors here. '53. Okay. So the colors I'm going to do on my chimney are going to be E50, E40, and 53.
Is there a reason you saved that for last?
Is there a reason I saved the chimney for last?
Yeah, or not really last.
No.
Or this, okay.
No. No.
People want to know.
No, I was just working, yeah, I was just working in here. So, it is a different color. It is going to be slightly different color. I want it to look more like stone than cookie. So I have E50. I'm going to come around and just put the E50 down very gently in between all of these little stones on the chimney. Just drag a little bit of that color in. Tiny, tiny little bit. Then I'm going to move to E53. And underneath the stones, I'm going to put some of the E53. I'm not going up above them. I'm just going like underneath some of the stones a bit, leaving some of that 50 to show. And now you're going to see the magic of the E40. Because E40, if you remember, is kind of a mushroomy color. It's so pretty. I love it. So I'm going to come in with that E40 now, kind of over all of that a little bit. Blending those together, and you get a beautiful, beautiful kind of warm gray. And it just has a different look than the house. I don't want it to look like a cookie. And then now we're going to move to grays. And we're going to start taking care of the chimney, and we're going to start taking care of the snow. And then we're going to start adding all the depth, because now right now everything is really bright. It's really pretty and it's really bright, and we're going to kind of darken it a little bit. And this is where I get to have fun. I love this part. I colored an image a long time ago with just a variation of grays. It was just the ends, the cools, and the warm grays. And I just loved it. It was so much fun to do. So I'm going to start off with my C's, my cool grays. Okay. So cool grays have a blue undertone. So this is where we're going to be working. I'm going to use this on things like the snow. Let me see. Let me show you. Let me see if I can show you something here. That's a C3. Do I have a W3? Here's a W3. Here's a W3. And then here's an N3. Okay? So you can see the difference. This is your C. That's your cool. This is your warm, or your W. And this is your N, which is your neutral. All right? So your neutrals are your truest grays, I would say. Like the closer, you know, the darker you get in your neutral grays, you're going to get closer and closer to black. Your W has a brown undertone. That's why it's called a warm gray. That's like your dove gray and stuff, really, really pretty. And then your cool gray is your C that has a blue undertone. And I like to use cool grays whenever I'm working with cool colors, like your blues, pinks. You can also use neutrals with those. You can use neutrals with any of them. Warm grays I like to use to age things a lot too, and I will use those with warmer colors, with a lot of browns and stuff like that. And then neutrals I will use more if I'm coloring like tires on a car, if I'm coloring like maybe a penguin. I mean, penguin you could go with a cool gray as well, but it ends up looking like Mother Jefferson. So you might go to like your neutral because you want to get closer to the black color than that cool gray. Anybody know who Mother Jefferson is? One of my favorite shows. I love the Jeffersons, but she had the blue hair, like that bluish gray. My grandma had that too, so we used to always tease her about that because it was just funny, like an unnatural gray color. But anyway, okay. Here we go. So I'm going to start off with my C's, my cool grays, and I'm going to do, this is going to be like the snow in here. So I'm going to just kind of start adding some of this in. This is a C1. Let me get rid of this. It's in my way. Oh, I got to go like this too. I'm just going to start pulling this in just a little bit underneath. Pull this down, give a little bit of texture in there. Up from the bottom, just a little bit because we don't want to cover up all that white. I'm going to do the same thing in here, just to create a little bit of movement. Just to kind of enhance the curl a little bit. I'm going like in the same direction really as the curls, but I'm just enhancing them. This one looks like a little gumdrop, but I think it's like a little rock, but well, I might color those in some color when I'm done. We'll see. A little bit here at the base. I'm not doing too much. And that'll show up a little more when I get to the next color. Right now I'm just kind of mapping out what I want to do. All right. So that's like snow. So I want to keep that with the cool. I'm going to do the same thing up here. I'm going to pull this up a little bit, or push that up tiny little bit there, and just kind of flick that down, pull it down, have a little bit of texture up there. Oh, let me get a little bit over here too. All right. So that was C1. Now we're doing C3. You got to be careful with these because you don't want to go too heavy. So I'm going to go up. I'm not going to do as much as I did with C1. pull that down, flick up a little bit, just to kind of enhance it a little. Gives a suggestion of some depth, a little suggestion of some movement. And less is more when you're doing this, because you don't want a lot. You can overdo it if you keep going. All right, so just a little bit of texture there, gives a little bit of a shadow. That is the cool grays. Next, I'm going to grab my warm grays. And in addition to my warm grays, I've got my E40 here in case I need it. But I'm going to start, actually, do I want to start with that? Let me see I do. I want to start with it. I'm going to start with my E40, which is one of my favorite colors. And I'm going to do these little stones up here on the chimney in my E40. I'm going to just very, very gently give those a coat of E40. Okay? Just with the side of the brush. Now I'm going to graduate up to W1. So E40 has that brown kind of dove gray. And now with my W1, I'm going to start putting a little bit of color around the edge, flicking up and in just a little bit, tiny little bit of color around the edge of each of these little stones, because I want to show depth and I want to round them out a little bit. So when I do this, I like to be cautious. I can always add more, but I can't, it's harder to remove it. Okay, so you can see it starts to round out a little bit. It's higher, brighter up in the center where the stones are going to be rounded, and then it's a little bit darker on the edges where they start to round and curve around. So now we have W3. I'm going to do that same kind of thing. Work that color in just a little bit. Keep it darker around the edges. There you go, just a little bit like that. What?
They just popped out. Just popped out.
I think Alan's impressed. Have you ever actually watched me color before? Yeah. Now this is W5. Use this very, very sparingly. We're going to go in right real harsh on some of these edges where you really want them to stand out underneath, like where it curves around. All right. Get this one here a little bit. There we go. And then I'm going to come back to a W1 and soften that blend just a tiny little bit. They look more like stones. This is my W3. I'm going to go up underneath here a bit. Rich in that. All right. I'm going to, where's my W3 and W5? I'm going to set aside over here because I'm going to need those some more. So then my next one is going to be, let me see if this is the one I want. Ooh. All right. Where's my cool? My next one is going to be my cools again. So here's my C1. Okay. Now C's I'm going to use on all of this icing all around here, and we're going to be careful with this. So I'm going to start pulling this around. Move this over here, hopefully it'll, and I'm just going on the underside. You're not going to be able to see this very well because I'm just mapping it out. I'm going on the underside of each of these little curves of icing. Just on the underside a little bit. I'm going to pull this out underneath. Down on the underside here. All right. Now we're going to tend to these little candy canes also. Put a little bit of gray just on the underside of those to give them a little bit more depth. Strengthen this color in here a bit. I think I forgot to do that part. I'm going to come on the underside here. Oh, you know what? I never went in with my darker red here. I just noticed that. There we go. That was my R27, by the way. Now, I'll warm that up in a moment. Okay, so now I'm going to come in on the underside of each of these little pieces of icing here. Be careful with that red. I'm going to come up underneath here on the underside again. You know what? There's more candy cane down here that I missed. This is what happens as you start getting around in here. You start realizing some of the things that maybe you didn't get. So I'm just getting in here with my red a little, just to get that last little bit. Okay. And then I'm going to come in on the inside, just dot in some of that gray, just to give it some depth. And again, I'm coming in on the underside of each of these. Dab a little bit underneath. This is my C1, remember? Now you may not be able to see these lines. That's intentional. I don't want them to be really dark just yet because I'm mapping it out. A little bit of gray on these little, on the inside of those little white areas there. The crosshatch here, coming from the center and out. Just dot some of that in there. And then I'm going to go on the underside of each of these. Literally just touching a little bit in, just a little bit of shadow. And you will see that richen with the next round. I did see, let's see, oh, I wanted to hit this up here too because I didn't get, this is my cool gray still. A tiny little bit up there. Okay, so that was C1. Now we're moving to C3. And now you got to be even more careful. I'm going to deepen this shadow underneath each of these just a little bit. So I'm just getting that little bit of shadow underneath. Can you see what that does? It just gives that little, it gives it that extra little push of a curve, which is really pretty. All right. Now I'm going to get these a little bit too. Just on the underside to give it that little bit of a curl. Touch in a little dot will do ya on each of those just for depth of color. The little candy canes. Each of these on the underside. There we go. And then a little dot of each of these. It just strengthens those little shadows that are so important. This is the part that I love, because this is the part that I could spend an hour doing this. So now I'm just adding a little bit of shadow to the inside of each of those little swirls. Makes those little swirls pop out. Right into each of these little candies. Just a tiny little dot. And all of a sudden you see the depth. It makes it look like they go in and out just a little bit. The tops of these. I'm going to go underneath here a bit. Okay. All right, so that is my C. That's the C's. Let me see if there's any more. Oh, I know what I wanted to get. It's right in here, just a little bit more. A little more movement on those. All right. Now is my favorite part. Now I'm going to start adding, this is where I pull my W's in, and this is where we start to age it a bit. This is where we start grabbing the W's. So I have W3 and W5. 5 I may not need, we'll see, but I have W3 and W5. This is where I really get to have fun. Actually, I'm not going to do W5. I'm going to do W1 and W3. So I'm going to start with W3, and wherever I want it to be darker and aged, I'm going to start applying W3 right over the top. These areas that I really want to have a strong accent on these dark areas, I'm literally just going to go right over, and watch what happens with this red when I start to come over that red. You see what that does? Isn't that gorgeous? Just that area right there, I hit that with a little bit of W3. It's a warm gray. It ages beautifully. This is W3. Start light. You can always go darker if you need to. So you can see the difference just in this area than up in here. Or even this side versus this side here. It's so gorgeous what it does. So let's add that right over the darker area there. I'm going to come in over the darker areas like on the door. I'm going to come right up over some of that green and just brush some of that in. And look what it does. Isn't that beautiful? It just gives it instant age. But you want to use it sparingly. You don't want it everywhere. Because if you do it too much, then it stands out. And you don't want it to stand out. You don't want people to look and say, hey, what did they do there? So I'm going to put some on the edge of the green over here, the edge of that tree, just to create that little bit of shadow. Underneath each of these windows, the edge of the green right down here. Look how pretty. Underneath each of the windows. go around the corners of the windows in here. I love going around the corners of windows because it just really draws a lot of attention. Draws your eye there, but you don't know why. It just makes everything really stand out. You pull some of that shadow into the window a bit. Isn't it beautiful? Watch, just pull some in. It's like haunting. Instant age, instant texture. Let's take this, and this is just W3. We'll take W5 over some of the areas that that are already really dark, but we want to richen them even more. So you can see it still looks red, but that depth of color is just gorgeous. Let's get these corners a bit. Okay. Ooh, I know where I need to go. Right on the edges in here. Now, I'm going to graduate to a W5. I'm sorry, I'm going back down to a W1 because I want to come into this yellow a bit. Very, very light. If I had done this part with the darker one, it would have been too much. But isn't it pretty? Gives it a beautiful look of age, a little bit of movement. I'm going to go back to my Y02 because I got a little more gray in here than I wanted, and I just want to soften that and blend that out a bit. So everything is fixable. See how pretty? Now here it is, W5. So W5 I'm going to take very sparingly in some of these areas that I really want to recess. So up under here, where we really want to see that overhang. Isn't that pretty? And again, do this sparingly because you don't want to get rid of all your little cookie crumbs. Underneath the windows, just to deepen that a bit. These little areas just to make them a little bit deeper, a little stronger. We're almost done. I think Alan is finally understanding why I spend hours coloring when I do these kinds of things, because I could just do this part a long, long time. I just realized something I forgot on here. All right, look at that, so pretty. I am going to do a couple of little gumdrops down here that I missed. Actually, not green because we have green down there. So why don't we put a little red one here? Put a little red gumdrop here, like a little candy. I think the red stands out nicely. That one looks red too. So I'm literally just pulling out my reds. Our 20, what was that? 22, 24. And yeah, I'm just going light to dark. It just adds a little bit of color. And then brighten that up there. I have a couple more over here. I'm going to make them all red because I think that really shows up, and I could use the color at the bottom. I think I just grabbed one that's not even supposed to be one, but that's okay. Who's going to know the difference? There we go. And then the last thing that you can do if you want, and this was something I did, was I grabbed this. I have a little Sharpie paint pen. You can find these like on, I don't know, wherever, on, what is it called? Amazon. Just shake this up. It's literally like the coolest paint pen. See how nice that is? And then I just took it and I literally went like this and just dotted it all around to make it look like we had snow everywhere. Like that.
Oh, like it's snowing, or like snow is there?
Like it's snowing. I did it on the rest of the card too when I did it. But, and you could do this with like paint if you wanted, you know, you could splatter paint and all that, but I just went like this. And I liked it too because it did little highlights. You know, you can touch up your little highlights on your candies with it if you wanted to add a little bit more, just like so. Like that on the tops of your little candies here, just to brighten them up. I love these little paint pens. I think they're great. So anyway, that is basically it. That is how I did it. Yay. There we go. Get a little more on the door.
What's the pen called again?
It is a Sharpie paint pen. This is a fine point paint pen. It's just, it comes across as really white and really pretty. I just really like it a lot.
Enough of the snow.
Huh?
Enough of the snow.
Enough of the snow. See, I could just keep going and going and going. Ah! That's it. That is the whole thing. So I'm going to show you. It is a little bit, you know, it's a little bit different maybe. Actually, no, it looks...
You got a face in the window.
Well, yeah, because I had gingerbread people in here the first time when I made the card. I used my gingerbread house and the die. Actually, well, I'll leave it there. And then, wait a minute, and then I also used the gingerbread men and the gingerbread kisses. And so I actually did cut it, so I colored it first, and then I cut it out with the big die. And then I cut out the windows and the doors. You just lay that over the top of it, and then your little windows and stuff will open, and you can put your little characters in there. So we have a little dog in the inside here, and these are two little gingerbread people. This one here, and then we have one back there in that window. That window cuts out completely. But that is it. That is the whole gingerbread house. Oh my gosh, we did it in 2 hours.
Exactly.
How in the world did that happen? In 2 hours. Wow. Yay, it happened in 2 hours. So there you go. Well, you can't see the green now because I have the green screen on, but there it is. Gosh, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Yay. Proof that I really do color the images myself. So anyway, that is it. Let me think. Were there any other questions that didn't get asked or didn't get answered? Anything from anybody? No? Bueller? No?
New kit when? You never answered.
Oh, when is the new exclusive kit? That's the question. January is our next exclusive kit. Yay.
Beginning and?
I don't have the date yet. I have to wait until I have the shipping, the ship date for the dies. So what I may do is actually release it really early in January, like a pre-order, I think is what I'll do. And then as soon as everything arrives, the rest of the stuff arrives, then we'll get it all shipped. So I think what we'll do is like a pre-order at the beginning of January. It's going to be really cool. It's a really, really beautiful kit. So I think you guys are going to like it. I hope so anyway. So, I got the Nina paper in the store, and I know somebody had suggested that maybe we include a little sample along, with some of the orders. And I think what I want to do is maybe try and find a way on the website to allow you guys to click if you want a sample put in there. Because I mean, first to put that in every single order, and a lot of people may not want it, and I don't want people just to take it and throw it away if they don't want the sample. You know what I mean? Because that would just be a waste. So I think we need to figure out a way that we can actually click and and say, hey, can you give me a sample? Or maybe
Stamps and stuff like that.
uh-huh.
Free stamps that we give
Well, or
away.
maybe if you're interested in the paper and you're placing an order, then maybe you could just say in the little comments thing, for now at least, you could say, hey, can you give me a little, A2 sample of the Nina paper so I can try it out? And we could do that. That would be easy enough too. That way we're not just putting it out there in every single order, because that would be a lot. But anyway, let's see. What can we do for a giveaway tonight? What can we do for a giveaway?
I have no idea. You're the boss.
I don't have anything with me here. I don't want to give these away because everybody just bought these to do this. So
Oh, not everybody bought them. I know one person would love to have them.
boy, let me see. I don't know, what can we give away? All right, I have no idea what the giveaway is going to be. So we're just going to draw a name and you're going to get a surprise. Let's do that. It'll be a surprise. So give me a name. I wasn't prepared, apparently. Lynn Rourke. Lynn Rourke, you are the winner tonight. I don't know what you're going to win, but it's going to be good because it always is. So, Lynn, we need you to give us your complete mailing address. Send it in an email to ldrscreative.com, and we will get your surprise, your surprise. Get it, surprise, out to you very quickly. All right, everybody, I have no idea what I'm going to work on next week. No idea what it's going to be, but I will start thinking about it. So until then, I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Those of you that stuck with us for 2 hours, I really applaud you. Thank you. I had fun. Thanks, everybody. It was an absolute pleasure. Have a good night.